I never thought I'd be starting over at 62. My name is Margaret, though everyone has called me Maggie since I was a little girl. I've been divorced for almost 12 years now, after 30 years of marriage to a man who decided he preferred his secretary to his wife. Classic story, right? I have 2 children, my son James who's 38, and my daughter Kelly who's 35. Kelly lives across the country with her husband and their twins who just turned 4 last month. James lives just 20 minutes away with his wife Diane and their 3 children. Lily who's 10, Max who's 7, and little Connor who just turned 3. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the kitchen as I carefully pulled the roast from the oven. Perfect. Golden brown on the outside, and I knew from experience it would be tender and juicy inside. The potatoes were roasted to perfection around it, crispy on the outside and fluffy within. I'd been cooking since 2 in the afternoon, and it was now nearly 6. The dining table was set with Diane's good china, which between you and me was just a mid-price set from a department store, but she treated those plates like they were family heirlooms. Something smells amazing, Mom, James said, walking into the kitchen with Connor on his hip. My grandson reached for me immediately, and I quickly wiped my hands on a dish towel before taking him. Hey little man, I said, kissing his soft cheek. He giggled and patted my face with his small hands. Gamma made food, he announced importantly. Yes, I did. Your favorite, mashed potatoes with extra butter. I bounced him gently and turned to James. Where are the others? Lily's finishing homework. Max is watching something on his tablet. Diane's upstairs changing. James glanced at the spread on the counter. The roast, the potatoes, the green beans with almonds, the homemade rolls, and the apple pie cooling by the window. Mom, you went all out. I shrugged. It's not every day my son asks me over for a family dinner. The truth was, it had been months since I'd seen all of them together. Weekly phone calls and the occasional meetup with James for coffee was the most I'd had lately. When James called yesterday asking if I could come for dinner, I immediately offered to cook. I knew Diane worked long hours at her law firm, and James had his hands full with his teaching job and the kids. I thought I was being helpful. I didn't realize until I arrived that Diane had expected me to just join them for dinner, not prepare it. But when I showed up with grocery bags full of ingredients, James seemed relieved and Diane just gave that tight smile of hers before disappearing upstairs to catch up on some work. 6 hours later, I had transformed their kitchen into a small feast. I was tired, my back ached from standing so long, but seeing Connor's excited face and James's grateful expression made it all worthwhile. Family was everything to me. After the divorce, they were what kept me going. Is there anything I can do to help? James asked, though he was already reaching for his ringing phone. No, go ahead. I've got it all under control. I set Connor in his booster seat with a small piece of roll to keep him occupied. Just round everyone up in about 10 minutes. I heard the clipped, precise footsteps before I saw her. Diane entered the kitchen in what appeared to be brand new loungewear. Cashmere if I had to guess. Her dark hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, not a strand out of place. At 36, she was beautiful in that polished, intimidating way. The kind of beauty that comes with expensive skincare routines and regular appointments with exclusive stylists. Margaret, she said with a nod. Not Mom. Not Maggie. Always Margaret. Spoken like she was addressing a slightly troublesome client. Dinner's ready, I said, smiling despite the coolness of her greeting. I was just telling James to get everyone to the table. She glanced at the clock on the microwave. It's past the kids' normal dinner time. Only by 15 minutes, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I think they'll survive. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she turned and called out, Lily, Max, dinner. Dinner started pleasantly enough. The children were excited about the food, especially the rolls, which they slathered with butter. James complimented everything. Even Diane admitted the roast was cooked well. High praise from her. It was when I brought up the idea of taking the kids to the Science Museum that weekend that things began to shift. They're already committed to activities, Diane said before the children could even react to my suggestion. Lily has ballet, Max has soccer, and Connor has his playgroup. Maybe next weekend then? I ventured. We're pretty scheduled through the month, she replied, cutting her meat with surgical precision. End of school year activities, you know how it is. I did know how it was. It was the same response I'd received for the past 3 months whenever I suggested spending time with my grandchildren. Maybe Grandma could come to my soccer game instead, Max piped up, his mouth half full of potatoes. Don't talk with your mouth full, Diane corrected automatically, but then seemed annoyed that Max had found a solution. I'd love to come to your game, I said quickly. When is it? Saturday at 10, Max said after swallowing. I'm playing defense now. We'll have to see, Diane interjected. The field is quite a drive for your grandmother. It's 20 minutes away, Diane, I said quietly. The same distance as your house. Still, at your age, driving to unfamiliar places. I felt my cheeks flush. I'm 62, not 90. I drive all over the city. James cleared his throat. Mom can come to the game if she wants to, Diane. A small victory that shouldn't have been a battle in the first place. As dinner continued, I noticed how Diane managed to insert little comments about my age, my living situation, a small apartment that was actually quite spacious, and even my clothes so practical. Each remark delivered with a smile that never reached her eyes. When it was time for dessert, I stood to clear the plates. I made apple pie, I announced, trying to recapture the warmth from the beginning of the meal. With cinnamon ice cream. More sugar, Diane murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. The kids will be bouncing off the walls. It's a special occasion, James said, squeezing my shoulder as he helped me gather dishes. What's the occasion? Diane asked, one perfect eyebrow raised. Family dinner, James replied. Mom cooking for us. Diane's smile tightened again. Right. In the kitchen, James helped me load the dishwasher while I sliced the pie. Everything was delicious, Mom, he said, his voice low. Really? Thank you for doing this. I'm happy to cook for my family anytime, I said, meaning it completely. I miss you all. He looked pained for a moment. I know. Things have been busy. Your wife doesn't like me very much, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. That's not true, James protested, but without much conviction. She's just particular about things. Particular about things. That was one way of putting it. Particular about keeping me at arm's length from my son and grandchildren. She's never forgiven me for that comment about her bridesmaids' dresses at your wedding, has she? I said, trying to make light of it. James sighed. That was 8 years ago, Mom. And I apologized. The pale yellow did wash out some of the girls, but it was a lovely wedding. Can we not do this tonight? James asked, rubbing his temple. Let's just have dessert, okay? I nodded, swallowing my hurt. Of course. Help me carry these plates. The kids loved the pie as I knew they would. Even Diane took a small slice, though she only ate half. As I watched my family around the table, Connor with ice cream on his chin, Lily carefully separating the apple filling from the crust, Max taking enormous bites, James relaxed and smiling, I felt a bittersweet happiness. These moments were too rare. After dessert, the kids thanked me and scattered to their various activities. James took Connor upstairs for his bath, leaving me alone with Diane in the dining room. That was quite a production, she said, gesturing to the remnants of our meal. Though next time, perhaps check with me before taking over my kitchen for the entire day. I took a deep breath. I thought I was helping, Diane. You and James both work so hard. We manage just fine, she said. We have a meal planning system that works for us. The kids have their routines. And I disrupted all that by making a special dinner? You always do this, she said, stacking dessert plates with more force than necessary. Swoop in, spoil the kids with treats and presents, ignore the rules James and I have set, then leave us to deal with the aftermath. I stared at her, genuinely confused. What aftermath? I made dinner. I brought a few small gifts for the children last Christmas. How is that swooping in? It's the pattern, Margaret. You're trying to be the fun grandma while undermining our parenting. That's absurd, I said, feeling my temperature rise. I respect your parenting. I just want to be part of my grandchildren's lives. On your terms, she shot back. Whenever it's convenient for you. That stung, especially because it was so untrue. I've been trying to see more of the children for months. I'm always available for them, I said firmly. You're the one who keeps scheduling activities whenever I suggest spending time with them. She looked at me coldly. Not everything revolves around your schedule. Before I could respond, we heard James returning downstairs. Diane's demeanor changed instantly, her face smoothing into a pleasant mask. James looked between us, clearly sensing the tension. Everything okay? Just discussing the dinner, Diane said smoothly. Your mother put in quite a lot of work. It was my pleasure, I said automatically. I began to gather the remaining dishes, needing to busy my hands. You don't need to clean up, James said. You've done enough. I don't mind, I insisted. Let me just load these into the dishwasher and wash the roasting pan. Actually, Diane said, her voice suddenly sweet but with an edge I recognized all too well. If you're offering to clean Margaret, the whole kitchen could use a good scrubbing. Since you used every pot and pan we own. I froze, a stack of plates in my hands. Diane, James said, his tone warning. She shrugged, that fake smile still in place. What? Margaret offered. And she did make quite a mess in there. All those dishes, food scraps, grease everywhere. She looked me directly in the eyes. If you want to cook in our kitchen, you should clean it properly too. That's only fair, isn't it? I stood there, feeling the weight of her words far more than the weight of the dishes in my hands. I had spent hours preparing a meal for her family. I had cleaned as I went. Yes, there were dishes to wash and counters to wipe, but I had fully intended to leave the kitchen spotless. Her implication that I would do otherwise was deeply insulting. But it was more than that. It was the dismissive tone, the condescension, the clear message that in her house I was not family, I was help. James must have seen something in my face because he quickly stepped forward and took the plates from my hands. Mom, ignore her. You don't need to clean anything. No, she's right, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the lump forming in my throat. I made the mess, I should clean it up. It's only fair. See, Diane said smugly. Your mother understands basic courtesy. That's when I felt the first tear slide down my cheek. I quickly brushed it away, but not before James noticed. Mom. It's fine, I said, turning toward the kitchen to hide my face. I'll just put these in the dishwasher. In the kitchen, I set the plates down and gripped the edge of the counter, taking deep breaths. I could hear them arguing in hushed tones in the dining room. What is wrong with you? James was saying. She cooked for us all day. And she used every utensil we own, Diane replied. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. She's my mother, not the maid. She offered to clean up. I just agreed. You know what you did. I tuned them out, focusing on loading the dishwasher. Tears were flowing freely now, but I worked through them, methodically rinsing and placing each dish. By the time James came into the kitchen, I had composed myself somewhat. Mom, please stop. You don't have to do this. It's almost done, I said, not looking at him. Just the roasting pan left. I'm sorry about Diane, he said quietly. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. But she did. We both knew she did. Where is she now? I asked. Upstairs with the kids. Of course. She dropped her little bomb and retreated, leaving James to manage the fallout. It wasn't the first time. I scrubbed the roasting pan vigorously, as if I could scrub away the humiliation I felt. Mom, please. Let me finish this. No, I said firmly. Apparently, I need to earn my dinner around here. That's not true and you know it. But I didn't know it. Not anymore. What I did know was that something had shifted inside me. A lifetime of putting others first, my ex-husband, my children, and now my grandchildren. And where had it gotten me? Standing at my son's sink with dishpan hands and tears on my cheeks, while his wife implied I was a burden rather than family. I think I should go, I said, drying the pan with more care than it deserved. Don't leave like this, James pleaded. Let me get the kids to say goodbye properly. No, they're getting ready for bed. I don't want to disrupt their routine, I said, the last word bitter on my tongue. I dried my hands and removed the apron I'd been wearing all day. My back ached, my feet were sore, and my heart felt bruised in my chest. Will you at least let me drive you home? James asked. I'm perfectly capable of driving myself, I replied. At my age and all. He winced. You heard that. I hear everything, James. Even the things you think I don't. I gathered my purse and the light jacket I'd worn earlier. The sky had darkened outside and I could see my reflection in the kitchen window, a woman I barely recognized anymore. When had I become so diminished? "Will you call me when you get home?" he asked as he walked me to the door. "Yes," I said, though I wasn't sure I would. "And Mom?" He hesitated. "I really am sorry." I looked at my son, my beautiful boy who had somehow become a man who would sit silently while his wife insulted his mother. I loved him fiercely, but in that moment I was also deeply disappointed in him. "I know," I said finally, "but I'm not sure that's enough anymore." The drive home was a blur. Tears came and went. Anger flashed hot then cooled to a simmer. By the time I arrived at my apartment building, a strange calm had settled over me. I sat in my car for a long while, staring at nothing, thinking about everything. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Did you make it home?" I texted back a simple yes and turned off my phone. Inside my apartment, I looked around with new eyes. It wasn't small, as Diane so often implied. It was a spacious one-bedroom with a balcony overlooking a small park. I decorated it carefully after the divorce, my first time living alone in decades. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall was chosen by me for me. This was my space, my sanctuary. And yet, for years I'd been apologizing for it. For my life. For taking up space in my children's world. I walked to my dresser and opened the top drawer, pulling out a small leather-bound notebook. Inside were careful notes of my finances, my divorce settlement, my part-time work at the library, my small but sensible investments. I was far from wealthy, but I was comfortable. Independent. I flipped to the back of the notebook where I'd started a list years ago. Things to do someday. Travel to Italy. Learn to paint. Buy a small house with a garden. I hadn't looked at this list in years. Somehow, someday had never seemed to arrive. There was always someone else's needs to consider first. My ex-husband's career. My children's education. My grandchildren's events. But tonight, as I sat on my bed with my dreams written in fading ink before me, I made a decision. Someday was going to be now. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I planned. By morning, I had clarity I hadn't felt in years. First, I called my friend Patricia, who worked in real estate. "I want to look at houses," I said when she answered. "Small ones with gardens. Not condos, not apartments. A real house that's mine." "Well, good morning to you too," she laughed. "What brought this on?" "Long story," I replied. "But I'm ready for a change." Next, I called my financial advisor and discussed liquidating some investments. Then I called my boss at the library and requested 2 weeks of my accumulated vacation time. I didn't call James. 3 days passed before he called me. I let it go to voicemail the first 2 times. On the third call, I answered. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked immediately. "I've been worried sick." "I'm fine," I said. "Just busy." "Too busy to return my calls?" The hurt in his voice was apparent. "Yes," I said simply. "I've had some things to take care of." "Is this about what happened at dinner? Because Diane feels terrible." I doubted that very much, but I didn't say so. "This isn't about Diane," I said. "Not entirely. It's about me deciding what I want the rest of my life to look like." "What does that mean?" "It means I've been looking at houses. I'm going to buy one." Silence on the line. "Then a house? Where?" "Still in the city," I assured him. "But in the Garden District." "That's expensive, Mom." "I can afford it." Another silence. "Do you need help with this? I could go with you to look at places." "No thank you," I said firmly. "I'm doing this on my own." "I feel like you're shutting me out," he said, his voice small in a way that reminded me of him as a child. The maternal instinct to comfort him was strong, but I resisted it. This was part of my problem, always putting his feelings above my own. "I need some space, James. What happened at your house? It made me realize some things." "Mom, I said I was sorry about Diane." "It's not just about Diane," I interrupted. "It's about me letting myself become someone I don't recognize. Someone who accepts being treated as less than, because she's afraid of losing her family." "You're not going to lose us," he protested. "Aren't I? I barely see you or the kids as it is." When was the last time you came to my apartment? When was the last time you invited me over without me having to hint about it? When was the last time you stood up for me? He had no answer. I love you, James. I love those children more than I can express. But I can't keep living for brief moments of inclusion in your lives, while accepting disrespect the rest of the time. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm taking a step back. I'm focusing on myself for once. If that means I see less of you all for a while, then that's the price I'll pay for my self-respect. It was the hardest thing I'd ever said to my son, harder than telling him his father and I were divorcing, harder than explaining why his dad had missed his high school graduation for a business trip. This was me finally setting a boundary I should have established years ago. I don't understand where this is coming from, he said. One comment from Diane and you're cutting us off? It wasn't one comment, I said tiredly. It was years of comments. Years of subtle exclusions. Years of you allowing it to happen. That's not fair. Maybe not, I conceded. But it's how I feel. And for once, I'm going to honor those feelings instead of pushing them aside to keep the peace. After we hung up, I cried. Of course I did. I loved my son. But there was also a surprising sense of relief, of a burden being set down after carrying it too long. The next week passed in a whirlwind of house viewings, meetings with my financial advisor, and serious decluttering of my apartment. Patricia showed me 7 houses before I found it. A small craftsman bungalow with a front porch and a backyard garden that needed love but had good bones. It was at the very top of my budget, but the moment I walked in, I knew it was mine. The previous owners accepted my offer, and suddenly I was going to be a homeowner at 62. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. James called several times, but our conversations were brief and strained. Diane never called at all, which was no surprise. My daughter Kelly called from across the country, concerned after speaking with her brother. Are you having some kind of crisis, Mom? She asked. No, honey, I said. I'm having some kind of awakening. I told her about the house, about my plans to create a real home for myself. That sounds really good, actually, she said, surprising me. But what about James and the kids? What about them? I asked. They have their lives. I'm creating mine. But they need you, she insisted. Do they? Or do they just need the version of me that never complains, always helps, and accepts whatever scraps of time they offer? Kelly was quiet for a moment. When did you get so fierce, Mom? I laughed. I've always been fierce. I just forgot for a while. 2 weeks after that disastrous dinner at James and Diane's, I closed on the house. Patricia gave me a bottle of champagne and a houseplant as housewarming gifts. To new beginnings, she toasted as we stood in my empty living room. To finding myself again, I added. That night, sleeping on an air mattress in my new bedroom, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow, the movers would bring my furniture from the apartment. Next week, I'd start work on the garden. I had plans for a vegetable patch and a small seating area where I could have morning coffee. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Mom, we need to talk. Face to face. Please. I looked around my empty house, with its hardwood floors and big windows and possibilities stretched out before me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt truly in control of my own story. I texted back. Yes, we do. But not quite yet. I need a little more time. Then I turned off my phone, lay back on my air mattress, and fell into a deep dreamless sleep. The movers arrived promptly at 8 the next morning. I greeted them with coffee and pastries from the bakery down the street, my new neighborhood bakery. It felt strange and wonderful to say those words, even if just in my head. My neighborhood. My bakery. My house. By mid-afternoon, my modest furniture was arranged in the new space. It didn't fill the house. My apartment had been smaller after all, but it was a start. The movers had placed my sofa and armchair in the living room, my dining table and chairs in the small dining nook, and my bed frame was assembled in the master bedroom. The guest room remained empty except for boxes I hadn't yet unpacked. I had plans for that room, but they could wait. That's the last box, ma'am, the lead mover said, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. Where would you like it? The kitchen, please, I replied, tipping him generously when they finished. It had been worth every penny to have them handle the heavy lifting. Once they left, I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by boxes but feeling surprisingly unburdened. For the first time in years, possibly decades, I was completely free to arrange my life exactly as I wanted it. No compromises, no adjusting to someone else's preferences or schedule. Just me and my choices. I spent the rest of the day unpacking essentials and ordering Chinese takeout for dinner. I ate it sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, using a box as a table, with classical music playing from my phone. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. As darkness fell, I ventured into the overgrown backyard with a glass of wine. The previous owners had let the garden go, but I could see its potential in the fading light. There was a gnarled apple tree in one corner, a brick patio covered in moss, and flower beds currently hosting more weeds than flowers. It would be a significant project, but I had time. For once I had nothing but time. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, buzzed in my pocket. James again. "Mom, please call me. The kids are asking about you." A pang of guilt shot through me. I missed those children fiercely, but I remained firm in my conviction that this separation was necessary, not just for me but ultimately for all of us. I needed to rediscover myself before I could be the grandmother they deserved. I texted back. "Tell them I love them and I'm fixing up a special place where they can visit soon. I'll call tomorrow." It was a promise I intended to keep, but on my terms now. The next morning, I woke early to sunlight streaming through uncovered windows. I'd need to buy curtains, I thought idly, but for now the natural alarm clock was welcome. I made coffee in the new programmable machine I'd splurged on, one of the small luxuries I'd decided to allow myself, and carried it to the front porch. My new home had a proper front porch with enough room for a couple of chairs and a small table. Another project for another day. But even empty, it was a perfect spot to watch the neighborhood come to life. Across the street, a woman about my age was walking a small dog. She waved when she noticed me and I waved back, feeling a flutter of anticipation at the prospect of new neighbors, new friends. "You must be the new owner," she called, changing direction to cross the street. The little dog, some kind of terrier mix, trotted alongside her. "I'm Helen from across the way." "Maggie," I replied, setting my coffee down and moving to meet her at the steps. "Just moved in yesterday." "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said warmly. "It's nice to see the Turner place occupied again. They moved to Florida to be near their daughter 6 months ago." "That's what my realtor told me," I said, though she didn't mention why the garden was so neglected. Helen laughed. "George Turner threw his back out last summer and couldn't keep up with it. Though between you and me, it was never exactly a showplace even before that." I liked her immediately, straightforward, friendly but not overbearing. "The garden club meets on Thursdays at the community center," she continued. "Bunch of old biddies like us who know our way around a trowel. You should join us if you're planning to tackle that jungle out back." "I might just do that," I said, surprising myself. I'd never been one for clubs or group activities. After the divorce, I'd retreated into a small, safe world of work, home, and family. The idea of expanding that world was both terrifying and exhilarating. "We're having a potluck next Thursday," Helen said. "Just bring a dish in yourself. No pressure." No pressure. When was the last time I'd felt that? No expectations, no judgment, no complicated family dynamics. Just the simple human connection of sharing food with neighbors. "I'll be there," I said decisively. After Helen and her dog continued their walk, I sipped my cooling coffee and thought about the day ahead. I needed to unpack more boxes, shop for groceries, and call James as promised. But first, I wanted to explore my new home more thoroughly in the daylight. The house was nearly 100 years old, with the character and quirks that came with age. The hardwood floors creaked in spots. The bathroom tiles were vintage mint green that somehow worked. The kitchen had been updated sometime in the early 2000s, not exactly modern but functional, with solid wood cabinets and decent counter space. I ran my hands along the built-in bookshelf in the living room, imagining it filled with my books and mementos. I had downsized considerably after the divorce, but I'd kept the things that mattered most. Photo albums, my collection of classic novels, the pottery my children had made in elementary school. I unpacked these treasures first, arranging them carefully on the shelves. Each item had a story, a memory attached. For too long, these memories had been tinged with a sense of loss, of the family unit that had fractured, of the everyday moments I no longer shared with my children and grandchildren. But today, handling these objects felt different. They were artifacts of a life well lived, not just reminders of what was lost. By noon, I'd made significant progress with the unpacking. I decided to take a break and fulfill my promise to call James. I settled on the porch with another cup of coffee and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "Mom?" "Finally." "Hello to you too," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Where have you been? Why haven't you been answering your phone?" "I told you I've been busy. I moved yesterday." "Moved? So you really went through with buying a house? I thought maybe you were just talking about it." The disbelief in his voice stung, but I pushed past it. "Yes, I bought a house. I'm sitting on its front porch right now." "Without even letting me see it first?" "Mom, that's a huge decision." "I'm aware of that, James. I made it carefully, with help from my financial advisor and my friend Patricia, who's been in real estate for 20 years. "But I didn't need your permission or approval," I said, more sharply than I intended. I took a breath and softened my tone. "I'm a grown woman who's been managing her own affairs for over a decade. This was my decision to make. I just don't understand why you wouldn't want my input. Because this is about me reclaiming my independence. My life." "From who?" he asked. "Who were you dependent on?" "From the idea that my only value comes from what I can do for others," I said. "From the way I've let myself be treated as an afterthought in your lives." "That's not fair, Mom. We've been busy, yes, but you're important to us." "Am I? Then why did you sit silently while your wife humiliated me in your home? Why have I had to practically beg for time with my grandchildren for the past year?" His silence told me he had no good answer. "I don't want to fight, James," I said, suddenly tired. "I called because I promised to, and because I wanted to tell the children about my new house myself." "They're at school," he said. "But they've been asking about you. Especially Lily. She wanted to know why you haven't been coming over." "What did you tell her?" "That you were busy with some personal things." I didn't know what else to say. "You could have told her the truth," I suggested. "That grandma was sad about how she was treated and needed some time to herself. I'm not going to put that on a 10-year-old mom." "No, of course not," I conceded. "But children understand more than we give them credit for. They certainly pick up on tension between adults." "Diane has been asking about you too," he said, changing the subject. "Has she now? She feels bad about what happened." "Did she say that?" Another pause. "Not in those exact words, no." "What were her exact words, James?" He sighed. "She said she might have been too harsh about the kitchen thing. But you were being overly sensitive." I had to laugh. "Of course she did. And what did you say to that?" I said maybe you both overreacted. And there it was. James, my son whom I'd raised to stand up for what was right, who had once been the first to defend others on the playground, was still unwilling to truly stand up to his wife on my behalf. "That's not what happened, and I think you know it," I said quietly. "But I didn't call to rehash that night. I called to tell you about my new house and to ask when might be a good time for the children to visit. I have a spare bedroom I'm going to set up for them." "You want them to visit without us?" he asked, sounding surprised. "Eventually, yes. I'd like to have them for weekend sleepovers sometimes, once I'm fully settled. I don't know if Diane will be comfortable with that." I took a slow, deliberate breath before responding. "James, I am their grandmother. I am not asking for permission to see my grandchildren. I am extending an invitation and trying to be considerate of their schedules. But make no mistake. If Diane attempts to prevent them from having a relationship with me, that will not stand." My tone must have conveyed my seriousness because there was a long silence before he spoke again. "Let me talk to her," he finally said. "But it might help if you called her yourself, tried to clear the air." "I have nothing to apologize for," I said firmly. "If Diane wants to have a conversation about how we move forward, I'm willing to listen. But I will not call to grovel or make peace when I did nothing wrong." "Mom, I need to go, James. I have a lot of unpacking left to do. Please tell the children I love them and that I'll call again tomorrow around 4 if that works. They should be home from school by then." After we hung up, I sat for a long time on that empty porch, watching the street and thinking about boundaries, how difficult they are to establish when you've spent a lifetime without them, how necessary they are for dignity and self-respect, and how scary it is to hold them firm when those you love push against them. But I was determined not to backslide. This new chapter of my life required a new approach to relationships, even with my own children. The next few days passed in a blur of unpacking, organizing, and settling in. I bought curtains for the bedroom and living room. I found a local nursery and purchased some basic gardening tools. I joined a yoga class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. Each night I called my grandchildren. Brief conversations. Max would barely stay on the phone, Connor mostly babbled, but Lily would talk with me about her day, her friends, her latest art project. She asked detailed questions about my new house, especially the garden. "Can I help you plant flowers when I come visit?" she asked on our third call. "I would love that," I said. "I've already bought some seeds for us to start together." "When can I come?" "That's something your parents need to decide, sweetheart. But I hope it will be soon." "Daddy said maybe this weekend," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But Mommy hasn't said yes yet." My heart squeezed painfully. "Well, we'll just have to wait and see. But whether it's this weekend or another time, we're going to have such fun together." Thursday arrived, and with it, the garden club potluck Helen had mentioned. I spent the morning baking my signature lemon bars, then changed my outfit 3 times before settling on casual slacks and a light sweater. I felt like a teenager headed to a new school, equal parts excited and terrified. The community center was a short drive away, a red brick building that also housed the neighborhood library. I found the meeting room easily, following the sound of laughter and conversation. About 15 women were already there, arranging food on a long table and settling into chairs. Helen spotted me immediately and waved me over. "Everyone, this is Maggie, our new neighbor in the Turner place." A chorus of hellos greeted me, and I was quickly ushered to the food table to add my lemon bars to the spread. "Homemade?" asked a woman with silver hair and a stylish bob. "They look wonderful." "Family recipe," I said. "My grandmother taught me." "I'm Carol, by the way. Garden club president, though it's mostly a ceremonial title. More like person who got stuck with doing the paperwork." Another woman chimed in with a laugh. For the next 2 hours I ate delicious food, learned more names than I could possibly remember, and heard all about the neighborhood, which houses had the best sun exposure for vegetables, which streets got priority for snow removal in winter, which local officials were good about responding to community concerns. These women ranged in age from early 50s to late 70s. Some were married, some widowed, some divorced, some never married. They spoke openly about their lives, children, grandchildren, travel plans, health concerns, without the careful filtering I'd become accustomed to around Diane. There was no competitive edge to their conversations, no subtle put-downs or jockeying for position. "So Maggie," Carol said as we were all helping clean up after the meal, "Helen tells us you've got quite the jungle to tame in your backyard." "It's a bit overwhelming," I admitted. "I've done container gardening on my apartment balcony, but nothing on this scale." "We could make it a club project," suggested a woman named Ruth. "Season's just starting. Perfect time for a garden makeover." "Oh, I couldn't ask you all to do that," I protested. "You didn't ask, we offered," Carol said firmly. "That's what neighbors do. Besides, we love a good challenge, don't we, ladies?" Murmurs of agreement followed. "We could make it a work party," Helen suggested. "Bring tools, some potluck dishes, make a day of it." "My grandson could help with the heavy lifting," another woman offered. "He's home from college for the summer and needs to be pried away from his video games." I felt tears prickling behind my eyes at their kindness. These women who barely knew me. "That would be amazing," I managed to say. "Thank you." They settled on the following Saturday for the garden party. I left the community center with a list of phone numbers, Carol's husband's special fertilizer recipe, and a lightness in my heart I hadn't felt in years. On the drive home, my phone rang. It was James. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said about the kids visiting," he began without preamble. "Yes," I prompted when he paused. "Diane and I talked about it. She's willing to let Lily come over this Saturday for the day." Just Lily for now, since she's the oldest. To see how it goes. Let Lily come over. As if my own granddaughter needed permission to visit me. As if Diane was making some grand concession. I swallowed my irritation and focused on the positive. That's wonderful, James. I'd love to have Lily visit. Actually, some of my new neighbors are coming over Saturday to help me with the garden. Lily was just saying she wanted to help plant flowers. Neighbors? You've already met your neighbors. The surprise in his voice almost made me laugh. Did he think I was sitting alone in my empty house pining for my family? That I was incapable of making new connections? Yes, I joined the neighborhood garden club. They're having a work party at my house to help me tackle the backyard. Lily will love it. That's great, Mom. Really great. He sounded genuinely pleased, if still a bit confused by this new independent version of his mother. I can drop her off around 9 if that works? Perfect. And James? Thank you. This means a lot to me. Saturday dawned bright and clear. A perfect spring day for gardening. I was up early, preparing coffee and breakfast pastries for my gardening crew. At 8:30, vehicles began arriving, sedans and SUVs loaded with garden tools, plants, and enthusiastic women in wide-brimmed hats and gardening gloves. Helen arrived first with her husband Tom, who immediately went to work trimming back the overgrown apple tree. Carol brought flats of annuals, petunias, marigolds, and zinnias in bright colors. Ruth brought perennials from her own garden that she divided, hostas, daylilies, and something called autumn joy sedum that she promised would bloom beautifully in the fall. By the time James's car pulled into my driveway at 9, there were already 10 people working in my yard. The patio had been cleared of moss and swept clean, and the worst of the weeds had been pulled from the flower beds. Lily's eyes widened as she took in the scene. Grandma, are they all your friends? They are now, I replied, hugging her close. They came to help us make the garden beautiful. James stood awkwardly by his car, clearly surprised by the activity. Wow, Mom. This is quite an operation. Would you like to stay and help? I offered, not expecting him to accept. He glanced at his watch. I can't today. I need to take Max to soccer, and Diane has a meeting this afternoon, so I need to be back for Connor. Another time then, I said without pushing. I'll have Lily ready by 5 if that works for pickup. Actually, he said, looking slightly uncomfortable. Diane said she'd come get her. Around 4. Of course she would. Diane would want to see firsthand what I'd done with the house, no doubt to critique it later. 4 is fine, I said, refusing to let anything dampen this day. We'll be ready. After James left, I introduced Lily to everyone. She was shy at first but quickly warmed up when Carol showed her how to transplant a marigold into a freshly prepared flower bed. Gently now, Carol instructed. You want to give the roots room to spread. Lily's face was a study in concentration as she worked. Like this, Mrs. Carroll? Perfect, Carol praised. You're a natural gardener. By lunchtime, the transformation was remarkable. The weeds were gone, the beds were planted with a colorful mix of flowers, the patio was clean, and Tom had even repaired a broken step on the back porch. We all gathered on the newly cleared patio to enjoy a potluck lunch. Lily sat cross-legged next to me, her hands still bearing traces of soil despite washing up. This is the best day, she declared, biting into a sandwich. Can I come help every Saturday, Grandma? I hope you'll visit me often, I said carefully. But the garden won't need this much work every week, once we get it established. We could do other things, she suggested. Bake cookies or read books or play games. Absolutely, I agreed. And when your brothers are a little older, they can visit too. Maybe even stay overnight in the guest room I'm setting up. She nodded enthusiastically. I could help make it nice for them. What color is it going to be? I haven't decided yet. What do you think? Blue, she said immediately. That's Max's favorite. And Connor likes yellow. What about your favorite color? I asked. She thought for a moment. Purple. But I'm okay with blue and yellow for my brothers. Her generosity, so natural and unforced, brought a lump to my throat. This was what I'd been missing. These simple moments with my grandchildren, watching them grow into their personalities, their kindnesses, their quirks. After lunch, the garden crew began packing up. The major work was done, though there would be ongoing maintenance. They left me with care instructions, extra plants just in case, and promises to check in regularly. Come to garden club next Thursday, Helen reminded me as she left. We'll want a progress report. Once everyone had gone, Lily and I walked around the garden, admiring our work. The newly planted flowers added cheerful bursts of color. The apple tree, properly trimmed, no longer looked wild but charmingly rustic. The cleared patio now had space for the outdoor furniture I planned to buy. It's really pretty now, Grandma, Lily said, slipping her hand into mine. Can we go see inside your house too? I gave her the full tour, showing her each room and explaining my plans: curtains for the living room windows, a new rug for the hallway, bookshelves for the guest room. This is going to be your room when you stay overnight, I told her, showing her the empty bedroom that would eventually house a bed for her and her brothers. We can go shopping for bedding and decorations together when your parents say it's okay for overnight visits. When will that be? She asked. Soon, I hope, I said, wishing I felt as confident as I sounded. We spent the rest of the afternoon baking cookies in my new kitchen. Lily was a good helper, carefully measuring ingredients and only sneaking a few chocolate chips when she thought I wasn't looking. By 3:30 we had 4 dozen cookies cooling on racks and a kitchen that smelled like vanilla and chocolate. Can I take some home for Max and Connor? Lily asked. Of course, I said, finding a container to pack them in. And your parents too. Even Mom? She asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. I paused, surprised by the question. Yes, even your mom. Why do you ask? Lily shrugged, suddenly very interested in arranging cookies in the container. Sometimes you seem mad at her. Out of the mouths of babes. I chose my words carefully. Your mom and I don't always agree on things, but we both love you and your brothers very much. And sharing cookies is a nice way to show people we care about them, even when we disagree. She seemed satisfied with this answer and continued packing cookies. At 4 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Lily ran to answer it before I could, excited to show off her garden and the cookies she'd helped bake. I followed more slowly, bracing myself for Diane's critical eye, her polite but dismissive comments. But when I reached the front door, it wasn't Diane standing there. It was James. Daddy! Lily exclaimed. I thought Mom was coming. Change of plans, kiddo, he said, ruffling her hair. Mom got held up at her meeting, so I came instead. Wow, look at all those flowers. Did you help plant those? As Lily eagerly described her gardening adventures, I caught James's eye over her head. He gave a small shrug that could have meant anything, but there was something apologetic in his expression. Would you like to come in? I offered. See the house? Lily and I made cookies. I'd like that, he said, following us inside. I watched as James took in the house, the hardwood floors, the built-in bookshelves, the comfortable furniture arranged to make the most of the natural light from the windows. I saw appreciation in his eyes and something else, perhaps surprise that his mother had created such a lovely home on her own. Mom, this is really nice, he said sincerely. Thank you, I replied. It's coming together. Daddy, you have to see the backyard too, Lily insisted, pulling him toward the back door. Mrs. Carroll taught me how to plant marigolds, and Mr. Tom fixed the broken step. And Grandma says we're going to get patio furniture so we can eat outside when it's nice. James allowed himself to be led through the house and out to the backyard. I followed, watching as he took in the transformation of the previously overgrown space. The newly cleared and planted garden was indeed impressive, a testament to what could be accomplished with community help and a clear vision. Your neighbors did all this today? He asked, genuinely impressed. They helped, I corrected. I've joined the local garden club. Turns out I have a whole community here I didn't know about. That's great, Mom. Really? He hesitated. I've been worried about you being lonely. I'm not lonely, I said, realizing as I spoke that it was true. I'm building a new life here. Making friends. Creating something that's truly mine. Lily had wandered over to examine one of her newly planted marigolds, giving us a moment to talk more privately. About Diane, James began. She really was going to come today, but her meeting ran long. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. It's true, he insisted. She's trying, Mom. In her way. Is that why you've come instead of her? Because she's trying? He sighed. I know things have been difficult between you two. I know I haven't handled it well, but I'm trying to. I studied my son. His earnest face, so like his father's when we were first married, before disappointment and distance set in. I saw the boy who had once brought home stray cats and stood up to bullies. He was still in there somewhere. I know you are, I said finally. And I appreciate that you came today. That you let Lily visit. She had a great time, he said, watching his daughter. She's already asking when she can come back. Anytime, I said immediately. And her brothers too when they're ready. Max has been asking about you, James admitted. He wants to know if you'll come to his soccer game next Saturday. Championship match. The invitation, the first genuine one in months, warmed me like sunshine. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And maybe after, he said, you could come back to the house for lunch? All of us together. I thought about seeing Diane again, sitting at her dining table, navigating her subtle barbs and cold smiles. But I also thought about my grandchildren, about rebuilding bridges, about the strength I now carried within me. The knowledge that I had my own home to return to, my own life that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I'd like that, I said. But James? Things have to be different now. I won't accept being treated the way I was before. He nodded slowly. I understand. I wasn't entirely sure he did, but it was a start. Lily, time to go, he called. Go get your backpack and the cookies you made. As she raced inside, he turned back to me. The house really is nice, Mom. I'm proud of you for doing this. Thank you, I said. That means a lot to me. After they left, I sat on my back porch steps, surveying the garden and contemplating the day. I had experienced more joy, more connection, more purpose in the past few hours than I had in months of trying to maintain a place in my son's carefully controlled family life. This garden was like my new life, freshly planted, requiring care and attention, but with the promise of beauty and growth. There would be weeds to pull, adjustments to make, perhaps even some plants that wouldn't thrive. But the foundation was solid, the work had begun, and I was no longer alone in the effort. The next morning I woke to sunshine again. I made coffee and carried it to the front porch, now adorned with a small bistro table and chairs I'd ordered online the day before. As I settled in with my morning ritual, I saw Helen walking her dog across the street. She waved and I waved back. Coffee's hot if you'd like to join me, I called. Give me 5 minutes to drop Rusty off and I'll be right over, she replied cheerfully. I went inside to grab another mug, feeling a profound sense of contentment. At 62, I had finally learned that starting over wasn't a failure or a last resort. It was an opportunity, an adventure, a choice that was mine alone to make. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Max wants to know if you can teach him to make those chocolate chip cookies Lily brought home. Maybe after his soccer game next week. I smiled and texted back. I'd love to. My kitchen or yours? His response came quickly. Your house if that's okay. He wants to see the famous garden Lily hasn't stopped talking about. Perfect, I replied. I'll be ready. I set the phone down as Helen approached my porch, carrying a small basket. Muffins, she explained, holding it up. Left over from book club last night. Thought you might enjoy them with your coffee. You're a mind reader, I said, pouring her a cup. Come sit. Tell me about this book club. Is it as good as the garden club? As we settled into comfortable conversation, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in just a few short weeks. From feeling diminished and excluded in my son's home to building a new community, a new purpose, a new sense of self-worth. The path forward wouldn't be perfectly smooth. There would be difficult conversations with Diane, times when I would miss my grandchildren terribly, moments of doubt about my choices. But I had learned something essential. It's never too late to stand up for yourself, to create boundaries, to build the life you deserve. At 62, my story wasn't ending. It was finally truly beginning.